Good afternoon. Welcome on into the afternoon edition of From Day One. And we have the final part of the She Said court case. So without further ado, let's get to it and find out what the final resolution is.
Justin, that's a mischaracterization of her testimony.
Okay. Well, I guess
She said 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with the objection, and
okay, thank you. I was just trying to clarify. So he was there about 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Yes.
Okay. And then after he left, and then Miss Dean came over. I'm sorry, Miss Tia. What's Tia's last name?
Right.
Right. Thank you. Miss Wright arrived after 6 p.m.
Yes, 6:30.
And you said that you kind of walked through a lot about what Calvin did. Calvin is the son that you have with Mr. Dean?
Yes.
Okay, so it seems like you remember a lot of details about what they were doing, right?
No, I don't. I said that I wasn't quite sure what all they did, but at some point they were playing video games.
Yeah.
I was just here in the bedroom.
We talked about how, Calvin, if the way I recall it, I believe you testified that Calvin walked in. He let Mr. Dean in. Mr. Dean bought Calvin an airplane, and then I believe you said they were playing video games, and at that time you were talking to Ms. Wright. Is that correct?
A few hours later, I was talking to Ms. Wright, yes.
Okay.
But the airplane, he came in the door with that. So I didn't see them play with it or put it together. I just saw it in the box.
Okay. So, this sounds like a fairly regular day. What would you say? How do you remember it so well?
Because Abe always spends time at my house with Calvin.
Okay.
Tia and I play cards a lot. I normally tend to invite a lot of friends over for card games. I'm a very active person. I host a lot of dinner parties and things like that at my house for my family and friends.
So it sounds like this is sort of a regular occurrence for you. Right?
I wouldn't say regular. I just would say it's normal.
So you say it's similar. It's similar to a lot of other days.
Something that I probably do maybe 2 or 3 times a month.
Okay. So I guess my question to you is, how do you remember this specific day so specifically and not have it get mixed up with the other days?
I remember this
Argumentative.
Because
Objection, Ms. Zerker, hold on. She's answering the questions. She's under oath. Objection, argumentative.
Judge, I don't think it's argumentative. I just trying to figure out why she remembers this day specifically. I don't think it's argumentative.
Answer to the best of her ability. If you don't like the answer, you can make your arguments around that.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The objection is sustained.
Thank you, Judge. I have nothing further, Judge.
Thank you. Any redirect, Mr.
No redirect. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Next witness, please.
Your Honor, I would like to call Mr. Ibrahim Dean, a.k.a. Abe.
Good afternoon, sir. Could you please state your name for the record?
Yes, Ibrahim Dean.
All right, sir. Would you please raise your right hand to be sworn? You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, and the penalties of perjury, sir.
Yes.
All right, thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hi, Mr. Dean. I am Ms. Zerker's lawyer, and I'm going to ask you a few questions about, to the extent you can remember, what happened on April 18th, 2021, okay?
Yes.
Do you and Ms. Zerker have a child in common?
Yes.
What is that child's name?
Calvin.
Okay. Do you and Melissa Floyd have a child in common?
Yes.
And what is that child's name?
Amonte.
Okay. On April 18th, 2021, were you at Ms. Zerker's residence at any time that day?
Yes.
Do you remember what time of the day approximately you were there, when you arrived and when you left?
Yeah, I arrived shortly around 10 o'clock because it was early in the morning and because it was my birthday. so I wanted to see my son. So, and I left like a little close to possibly a little after 5 o'clock, around 5 o'clock, because it was starting to get dark out. That's pretty much the extent I know. It was like a little after 5 o'clock.
And what did you do while you were at Ms. Zerker's residence from approximately 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.?
I played Xbox with Calvin. We played some basketball. We played with his little flying drone. But for the most part, I just was really hanging out with him, jumping around Xbox, and yeah.
Okay. And you said that was your birthday?
Yeah.
All right. And was Ms. Zerker like with you the whole time or not?
No.
Where was she?
She was pretty much around, I guess, out and about. At first she was with her boyfriend. So I pretty much was with Calvin. I didn't really pay them much mind.
Was she at the house?
That I know of. When I got there, yeah. During the whole time, I don't know where anybody really was besides Calvin.
Okay. Where were you in Calvin? Like what part of the house?
The living room.
Okay. Were you and Calvin ever in any other room of the house?
At one, the kitchen.
Okay. Do you know someone named Tia Wright?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you recall if she was at Ms. Zerker's residence on April 18, 2021?
Yes, she was.
Do you remember what time she arrived?
No, I do not.
Your Honor, I don't have any further direct questions for Mr. Dean at this point.
Mr. Burdett.
Thank you, Judge. So, Mr. Dean, so I'm going to ask you some questions. You know, I'm not trying to trick you or trap you or get sneaky or clever with you. So if you have any questions that you have a hard time, that maybe if I don't phrase it correctly or I don't explain it well, it's not because I'm trying to trick you, but just let me know and I can try to rephrase it, okay? So I believe you said you got there in the morning and you were at the defendant's house until about 5 p.m.?
Yes.
Okay. And you said you spent most of your time with your son Calvin, right?
Right. Correct.
And so let's get the house layout here. So were you in the same room, or were you in a totally separate part of the house from the defendant, from Miss?
I was in a totally separate part of the house.
Right. And would she come in regularly and check in on you guys and say hello, or would she just kind of doing her own thing?
Doing her own thing.
And so did you go with long stretches of time without even seeing her that day?
Yeah.
So
pretty much, but most of the time I didn't see her. I was with Calvin, so
okay.
And we have that mutual trust. So.
And from where you were sitting with Calvin, could you see the exits to the house?
I could only see the front door.
Is there a back door?
Yeah.
And if somebody were to leave that back door, would you know it?
I'd leave out the back door.
Yeah.
Honestly, not really, because of her other children. Her other kids.
A lot of kids kind of coming and going.
Yeah, I was going to say people were kind of running around.
Okay. And so if Miss Zerker was to leave the house for a half hour, 45 minutes, would you know that?
I mean, I'd assume I would have seen it, because unless she didn't go out the front door, which I don't know why she would not.
But if she would have gone out the back door, it's possible.
If she would have went out the back door, there's a chance I probably wouldn't have even known, because my attention was on my son.
Pretty focused on your kid on Calvin there.
Yeah.
Okay. And nothing further, Judge.
Thank you. Any redirect?
No, nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. May this witness be excused.
Yes, sir.
I have nothing further, Judge.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dean. You are free to leave. You can stay if you so choose, or you can leave the space.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Have a good day, sir.
You too.
Next witness, please.
Judge, I'm sorry, Judge. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Banis. I actually have an objection to Ms. Tia Wright as to relevance. We've heard both through Ms. Zerker's own testimony that Ms. Wright didn't show up until 6 o'clock at night. The allegation that this occurred earlier in the day. The fact that she appeared so much later in the day means that she's not relevant to this case. This could have occurred well hours before Ms. Wright appeared on the scene.
Mr. Banis, what is the relevance of her testimony if she didn't arrive until 6:30?
Your Honor, I would like to ask Ms. Wright to confirm when she arrived, and I agree if she testifies that she didn't arrive till then that's fine.
Zerker already testified to that.
I'm sorry, what?
Ms. Zerker already testified that she didn't arrive until 6:30.
Okay, that's fine. No problem.
I mean, if you feel free to do that, you know what, I'm going to allow him to do that. And the questions are going to be limited to what time did she arrive first.
It'll be very brief. I mean, I think it's relevant that Ms. Zerker was at her home that day, but I fully agree that
If she was at home at 6:30 when something happened at 2 is not relevant.
I understand.
That's right.
Hello.
Thank you, ma'am. Could you please turn on your video? Thank you. Please raise your right hand to be sworn, ma'am. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. Ma'am, please tell us your first and last name.
Tia Wright.
All right. Mr. Banis, before you begin any extensive questioning, the questions are limited to what time did she arrive?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll just ask if it's okay, just some very, I think, acceptable foundational type questions. Ms. Wright, do you know someone named Taisha Zerker?
Yes.
Okay. On April 18th, 2021, do you remember where you were that day?
I went over Taisha's house.
Okay.
I'm not really sure about what time I got there.
Was it during the day or during the night, if you remember?
It was during the day.
To the best of your recollection, well, let me ask this. Do you remember what you did at her house that day?
Yeah, we were playing cards at her kitchen table.
Okay. I'm sorry, I just want to make sure. Did you say it was day or night when you arrived?
It was during the day. The sun was still out.
Okay. And this was April 2021, so it's kind of springtime in Michigan.
Right.
To the best of your recollection, and you can't speculate, but can you tell us when you arrived at her house that day?
I'm not 100% sure. I just know it was during the day, and I stayed pretty much all day. Well, I was there all day until the night.
Do you remember what time you left?
I want to say maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Okay. Was Taisha at the house with you the whole time you were there, or not?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Burdell, your witness.
I have no questions, Judge.
I have some questions. Ms. Wright, who was at the home when you were there?
Calvin and Abe was there when I first got there.
Who was there?
Calvin, her son, and Abe.
When you first got there?
Yes.
And then what happened? You said when you first got there, did something change about them being there?
He left for a minute.
Who left
I'm
for a
trying to
minute?
think. What did we do when we first got there? I'm not really.
Who left for a minute, ma'am?
Abe.
Okay. And is Abe the same as Mr. Ibrahim Dean?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And so when you arrived there, he was there?
Yes.
And
But
then
he left shortly after I got there.
he left shortly after you got there. When you arrived there, ma'am, do you have any way of determining an approximate time that you got there?
No, not really. I can't say for sure because honestly I don't remember.
Okay.
I do know we were there. We were talking, playing cards, in her kitchen.
At some point in time, did Ms. Zerker become upset about something?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right, I have no further questions. Any follow-up based on that, Mr. Bannis, is your witness, so I'll let you begin.
Well, I think to be fair and candid, it is important to try to determine when she arrived. So you said that Mr. Dean left shortly after you got there?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes, ma'am?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
How many minutes, just try to the best of your recollection, did he leave after you got there? Was it 30 minutes, 15 minutes?
No, it was a little longer, I want to say, than 15 minutes. But, yeah, I'm not really sure.
Well, let me put it this way. Hypothetically,
Mm-hmm.
if he left at 5 p.m., when do you think you arrived?
Maybe. I'm not sure then. Maybe.
Because you said it was daytime.
Yeah.
Sure. She doesn't know.
Okay, that's fine. No further questions. Thank you.
Mr. Burdell?
I do, Judge. Miss Wright, at any point did Ms. Zerker leave and then come back?
I don't think so. I can't really remember the day. I did have a few drinks when I was at her house. I don't think she left.
I have nothing further, Judge. Thank you, Miss Wright.
Thank you. Any
Your Honor, I just have some quick follow-up, if I may.
You may quickly.
Ms. Wright, what were you and Ms. Zerker doing while you were there?
Sure,
we were talking, playing cards like we normally do.
Okay.
You can ask questions that have not been asked already, Mr. Bannis.
I know, Your Honor. She said, is there any reason you would have been out of the room, in a separate room from Ms. Zerker?
Maybe a bathroom break. That's probably it. I don't think I left anywhere.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Right. Thank you. May this witness be excused?
Yes.
All right. You may, any further witnesses, Mr. Bannis?
No, Your Honor. Defense rest. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Closing arguments, Mr. Burdell.
Sorry, excuse me. All right, thank you, Judge. So this case ended up being a lot more sort of nebulous around the edges than I think we all expected. I think in this case, on paper, it's very straightforward. It's A and B, entering without owner's permission, simple misdemeanors, court deals with all the time. Everybody in here deals with all the time. The attorneys, anyway. I think this ended up being a lot more complicated than we all realized. I think we heard testimony from Ms. Floyd and Mr. Floyd. Mr. Floyd's testimony generally backed up the testimony from Melissa Floyd. Melissa testified that she was in her house, that the defendant walked in and grabbed her and tried to grab her son. Take the son away back to Mr. Dean, who they both have children in common with. She testified that there was chest bumping and that she was trying to hug on her. I think that they're trying to wrap her up was the way I interpreted that. The court heard the testimony, so I won't go any more speculation what I believe she meant by hug on her. She said that she was, I believe that the word she used was snarky.
No, she said snugly.
Snugly. Thank you.
No, I did say her demeanor
Melissa, this
was
isn't the time for you to talk, Melissa. We're done entering the evidence. Sorry, my apologies, Judge. She described the defendant's demeanor. She described her attitude. And she said that left out the back door, went to go put her child in the truck so they leave. And then at that time, the defendant came back outside, took the child out of the truck. And then that's when things became physical. There was chest bumping, there was more pushing, and Ms. Zerker slapped Ms. Floyd in the face. This is generally supported by what Mr. Floyd said, that he was in the backyard and Ms. Zerker walked up. He clearly had never met this person before because she asked she asked if Melissa was home, she asked who he was, I believe, and went into the house. Sometime later, came out, described the incident basically the same way. There are a number of questions, Your Honor, that are raised by this and by the defendant's version of the events. The defendant argues that she wasn't there. She was at her home playing cards. I'm wondering if she described in detail what she also described was a very regular day, something that she does pretty frequently. The details make me wonder how she could remember this day so specifically. How did she remember this date a year ago in April 18th? How does she remember that from March 5th, 2019 or 2021, or from May 7th, 2021, or from May 18th, 2021, or other days in April 2021? So I'm curious how she got the details so down. Mr. Dean, he testified that the defendant was there, but he was downstairs. He was in another room playing with their child, Calvin, the whole time. Not the whole time, most of the time. That his focus was on Calvin, and that he was playing video games most of the time. And so he also testified that the defendant, I asked him specifically, if somebody would have left out the back door, would you know it? He said, yeah, they could. He agreed that it's possible that somebody could have left, and that he wouldn't know because there were kids running and going, coming and going through that back door. So he may not know if Miss Zerker were to leave. I asked him if it was possible that Miss Zerker could have left for a bit of time. He said it's possible, because if she left out the back door, he wouldn't have been able to tell. So I think based on all of this, Your Honor, I think the only people whose stories match fully, and Ms. Zerker, I would like to, I don't believe she mentioned that her new boyfriend was there. I believe that was only Mr. Dean mentioned. And so not even the full cast of characters came out from Ms. Zerker. We've got several wildly different stories from the defense side and two stories on the people's side that are fairly the same. And so based on that, Judge, I think it goes to show the truthfulness of Ms. Floyd and Mr. TJ Floyd and the untruthfulness of the defendant and her witnesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes.
Thank you, Your Honor, and Mr. Riddell. Your Honor, obviously you may disagree because you're the judge and you have to make the decision, but I don't believe the prosecution has proved beyond a reasonable doubt each and every element of this charge. Now, the people say that this, they point out this was a regular day and call into question how my client remembers that day. Well, she's charged with a crime on that day, so of course she's going to think about what happened that day. That happens in every case. And I have asked her to remember what happened that day, as I do in every case. The people say there's wildly different testimony on the defense side. Actually, there's not. It's entirely consistent. Ms. Zerker testified that she was home that day. It was Mr. Dean's birthday. He came over to spend time with their son, as he has done before, and naturally he spent time with his son. I fully recognize the alibi defense is not a slam dunk because Mr. Dean was spending time with his son and Ms. Zerker was in other parts of the house. But, you know, it just seems more reasonable to conclude that if the mother of your child is going to leave for several hours, this allegedly occurred, according to Mr. Floyd, at around 2 or 2:30 p.m. Mr. Dean was there from, what was it, I think 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. I know he said he can't say for sure, but, I mean, you know, Ms. Zerker testified under oath that she never left. She's there with the father of their child, Calvin, and, you know, I just think it's plausible that if she had left, he would have known that. But of course, I acknowledge he didn't say, he wasn't sure. Tia Floyd, their friend who came over to play cards, they're there on a regular day playing cards. I recognize that she did say she arrived during the day. I think it's fair to conclude that she arrived sometime after this alleged incident, but she also said that Ms. Zerker wasn't upset. You know, they're friends, they're playing cards. Clearly, if something had happened, these two friends playing cards would have talked about it. Ms. Wright, on the prosecutor's question, said she wasn't upset about anything. Calvin and Abe, that is Mr. Dean, were present when Ms. Wright arrived. So clearly they were all three of them were there during the day together at various points during the day. Ms. Floyd, the complaining witness, has a child with Mr. Dean. You know, there were no marks on her face. I noted down no marks. I think she agreed to that. I don't know why TJ Floyd would lie. You know, maybe the judge believes him or not, but I mean, their testimony was consistent, but it just doesn't make sense, right? And this is why there's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Why would Ms. Zerker go over to someone's house? She has no connection to Amante. Amante is not her child. She's there playing cards. The father of her child, Calvin, is over there. Your Honor, it's just not adding up. And maybe Ms. Floyd has some reason for lying about Ms. Zerker. So, Your Honor, for all those reasons, for the testimony of Ms. Zerker, to the extent it is supported, which I think it is to some extent, by Mr. Dean and Ms. Wright, I'm asking you to find Ms. Zerker not guilty. Thank you.
Rebuttal, Mr. Goodell.
Thank you, Judge. I'll keep it brief. I have just a few points I want to make. So, on the direct testimony of Miss Melissa Floyd, we brought out a lot of testimony about CPS and custody came out, and I was expecting the argument to be that this was somehow a motive of Miss Floyd to lie. If that was true, why would Ms. Floyd make this allegation up against Ms. Zerker? Why wouldn't she go directly to Mr. Dean, who is the child's father? Why would she take this sort of circuitous, long, sort of backdoor route to somebody who's not even legally it has any involvement with the child she has in common with Mr. Dean? As to whether Ms. Zerker has any motivation, Your Honor, this strikes me as sort of a classic love triangle. We have two people who have a child with the same person, and they get territorial over that person, over that child, over perhaps, and we see this pattern. I'm not going to speculate as to what the specific perceived wrongs are, but people do get territorial over their co-parents. And as Ms. Zerker referred to Mr. Dean, she said, I asked, who is that person to you? Or I can't remember if it was me or Mr. Bannis. It was asked, who is Mr. Dean to you? And she said, he is my co-parent. We co-parent our child together. And so to me, Judge, that does go to show a motive. That I won't belabor the rest. The court heard the testimony, saw the photos, which I agree aren't very dispositive. However, I do think that they don't show marks, but I do think you can see in Ms. Floyd's face that something happened to her that day to make her very upset. If you look at it, I mean, I think she looks like a very different person in those photos than she does in the courtroom today. But like I said, the court has seen the photos, so I won't belabor the point. Thank you, Judge, and I do believe that there is guilt beyond a reasonable doubt here.
Thank you. I would agree with the prosecution in terms of the fact that this case turned out to be very different than we all had anticipated. This is a very unique situation, and the court is left to try to figure out whether there's proof beyond a reasonable doubt that these particular crimes were committed, and that's the only thing I have to decide today. In deciding that, I have to look at the credibility of each of the witnesses as they testified. And to my surprise, I think the witness that was the most credible to me in this particular case was Mr. T.J. Floyd. Mr. T.J. Floyd's testimony was that Ms. Zerker came from around the corner, and then she asked where Ms. Melissa Floyd was. She went into the home. And then there was screaming. Both parties were screaming. Miss Melissa Floyd remarkably couldn't remember anything they were yelling about during that entire time. I think tried to, in some way, shape, or form, minimize whatever activity she had going on in the house. So that begs the question of, first of all, Ms. Zerker said she didn't go there and she didn't slap anyone. She wasn't there. So the court, in terms of looking at the testimony today, and I strongly advise Ms. Zerker that anything she said could be used against her once she began to testify, and she does not have to present a defense, but when you take the stand, then the court gets to review what it is that you're saying. At some point in time, she said that, first of all, Mr. Dean came and was there from 10 until 5. Or 5:30 or somewhere in that range. Mr. Dean could not testify as to where her whereabouts were that entire time because he was with his son, and she could have gone out the back door. Leaves an opening for her being able to leave. She did not mention that her boyfriend was in the home when she was asked who all was present. She did not tell us that he was there. And I think that is relevant because at some point in time, Mr. T.J. Floyd said that Ms. Zerker left with someone who was not, or I think Melissa Floyd testified that Ms. Zerker left with someone who was not anyone that she had seen. So there was this anonymous individual who was present. And Ms. Zerker also testified that she was there until she was at her own apartment until Mr. Dean left. Mr. Dean left, and then she walked to the store. However, her witness, Ms. Tia Wright, testifies that she arrived before Mr. Dean left and that Ms. Zerker never left. So that presents a credibility question for the court in terms of what actually happened, in terms of whether Ms. Wright was there when she said she was or not there. I don't know. But the reality is that it does call into question those witnesses' testimony. At some point in time, Ms. Zerker said the police called while she was playing cards with her friend. And yet Ms. Zerker never got upset over a police call that she was being accused of a crime. That is telling to the court as well. So the testimony of the defense, other than Mr. Dean, has been called into question. The only issue then for the court is what to do about the testimony that came from Mr. Floyd and Ms. Floyd. Ms. Floyd, I think, minimized what was going on and was not willing to say what happened. So the issue of whether or not she was allowed to come into the home becomes questionable for the court, and I don't believe that the prosecution has met their burden of proof as to the breaking and entering. The thing that I think is very clear, and that Mr. T.J. Floyd testified to, is that Ms. Zerker was there. There was some fight outside in the parking lot, and they were clearly having an issue, and Ms. Zerker tried to take the child from the back seat. I don't know why. I don't have to decide that. But the reality is that he testified that he saw Ms. Zerker slap Ms. Floyd. And I believe that the prosecution has met their burden of proof with respect to the A and B. Therefore, that is what I find Ms. Zerker guilty of, assault and battery.
Good judge.
As to the sentencing in this case, it will be on June 13th.
Interesting. Prosecution only gets one out of the two charges, and not both. Let's do a really quick little couple-minute one from Judge Simpson to finish our day. Judge Simpson, if you'd be so kind, please.
Well, I apologize, Judge. I was using the bathroom when the first time the case was called.
Okay. Thank you very much for today. I tell you what, one thing I'm going to do before everybody leaves, I just want to take a moment of personal privilege. I have somebody here with me today who is actually substituting in for us as a reporter, and she is Terry Geisler, who's with Judge Freshour. And she has come over, and ever since the pandemic, and ever since her joining the court, she has come over to help us out when we're in a pinch and otherwise, and kind of trained together through the first part of the pandemic. And she will be leaving the court and retiring, I believe, May 20th, so in a few days. And I wanted to just take this opportunity publicly to Terry say thank you very much for everything that you've done, not only for this court, but I mean this sincerely from my heart, everything that you've done for this judge. You filled in, you don't miss a beat, you make sure that things go along, always very respectful, and just a great asset. So while you go off to your retirement and do all the wonderful things that you talked about, the court will be certainly poorer, I guess, by not having your presence here. So on behalf of this very grateful judge, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we will have Ms. Tang, if you are still president, if we can make sure that Ms. Wiegland, that she gets a copy of that. I'd like a copy of the court's remarks, prepare it in a transcript form and present it to Ms. Geisler for her to take into her retirement in case she may miss us. That's okay. All right, folks, thank you very much for everything you guys have done today. Do appreciate it.
Thank you, Judge. Can I retire, Judge?
Pardon?
Can I retire?
Can you retire? No.
Yes.
No. Unlike Terry, you haven't earned a darn thing. All right.
Jim, your wife doesn't want you at home.
There's no doubt about that one.
That's right. That's right. Where are you going to be? You'll just be on the street, just hanging around. All right. 14A1. Standard.
Alrighty, with that, we'll leave our part A to a close. Interesting finale to the case. Of course, we'll have our Sausage Karens in the evening and Art Bell in the overnight. Until then, like, share, and subscribe. Be kind to one another and release the Krakens as we march along this afternoon and every afternoon here from day one. Again, have a great afternoon. We'll see you tonight.